Welcome to the Plant Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chafee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chafee, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. John Leckman, who I've met in America recently, has an absolutely amazing story that we'd like to share with you today. So John, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to see you again.
Same here, Dr. Chafee. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you in person.
Yeah.
And I can tell people that you are quite a fit person.
Well,
seriously, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if you were going to be tall, short. You're what a human being should look like. That's the way I look. You're healthy and you have a good mind and you're helping the world.
Oh,
and I am very appreciative of the fact that I was able to find you and learn from you and get educated so I could take care of my own health.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't quite happening that way for me in the medical community. And I guess the best way for me to start about my life is to tell you why I ended up being in a life of pain.
Yeah.
When I was very young, my dad was in a car wreck. We didn't have a whole lot of money. And so starting at 15 years old, I used to go out and work as a laborer on construction. And when I was 16, I was told to go out on a porch roof and tear off the siding on the front of an old house so they could put new windows in and remodel it. And I took 4 steps, turned around to look at what I had to do, and I woke up on a concrete floor. About 18 feet below me, the roof was rotten, and I fell right through.
Oh, no.
And it changed my life. I mean, and this was 67 maybe. So I don't know where the surgery things were for spinal damage back then, but I really, really hurt. And, but I was young. I shook it off and just continued with my life. But nothing was ever quite the same after that. And, fast forward, I did all the normal things. I was always an avid snow skier. I tried to play golf, but now I know why I couldn't play golf, because I also jammed my left femur up into my hip socket. And I grew up with that. And nobody ever, as much as I looked at my back and all the issues, nobody ever looked at my hip. And hips don't really have pain like other things do. There's not a lot of nerves in your hips. So, with that being happening, I basically just destroyed the lowest disc in my back. I think it's the L5-S1. And over the years, especially when I got into the 90s, my left leg, I used to think it was just going to blow off my body sometimes. When I used to drive, I used to literally wear my pants on my thigh from rubbing my leg, trying not to make it hurt. And it was just such an oppressive thing. But, you just dealt with it. And days that I thought I was having good days, somebody would go, "Man, you're really limping today," because you accommodate to try to deal with it. And finally, in 2000, I decided to have spinal fusion. And I had spinal fusion on my L5-S1. They fused it. They were able to use my own bone material to create the powder and the titanium cage that they use for fusing. And I have all kind of little things in my back to support it. And quite frankly, it was amazing.
Good.
I was amazed. I mean, I went from being in such agony to not having pain. And this is before I had really ever access. This is my first exposure to really pain pills, because I never really got any pain pills in the 90s. It just wasn't something I did. I didn't go to the doctors enough to get them. And then right after that surgery, it was probably 6 months after, my wife and I went on a long road trip with our kids to New Jersey, and then we drove to Colorado. And to make a long story short, with that one, I ended up getting a blood clot in my left leg from my back of my knee to my ankle.
Mm.
And I never forget, we were stranded in a little town called Vernal, Utah, because our car broke. And I would get up in the morning, my leg would be fine, and then I would go through the day, and my ankle would literally be hanging over my shoe, so swollen. And I was like, what is happening to me? And actually, when we were in New Jersey, we went deep sea fishing, and the first mate dropped the knife accidentally, and it stuck in my foot. So I thought
Jeez.
I was having a reaction to that. And the surgeon that did my spinal fusion was a neurosurgeon by the name of Dr. Carl Larayson. And I think he's now the head of Cedars-Sinai, but this was 25 years ago. So who knows what he's doing now. And he even said to me back then, we don't usually have this kind of success, and I can't tell you what you're going to feel like in 20 years. He said, but enjoy it. And it was crazy. I would lay in the bedroom and I could actually feel the air from the fan moving the hair in my leg.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just things I lost all senses for because it just didn't work. And then also I hurt my neck. And in 2006, I had spinal fusion on my neck, which I really regret. I really probably shouldn't have done it. It hurt. I think that surgery should have been avoided, but it is what it is. I did it. And, and as time went on with that, and especially what happened to me is after the blood clot, I was then put on a life of blood thinners. Start taking Warfarin or Coumadin. And I had all the testing done to see if I had any predisposition for clotting. They all came back negative. You know, I have a neighbor that's an orthopedic surgeon, and he used to tell me I was nuts for taking this stuff. He thought it was more dangerous than getting another blood clot, which it probably is because you could bleed out so easily. And but, and I actually had a discussion. I'll tell you how it was. I had a discussion with one of my family doctors, and I was going to have some procedure. It might have been a colon. I don't know what it was. It was some medical procedure that I had to go off of Coumadin for 7 days. But 2 days before that, my level wasn't correct, and he wanted to change my level to another level, which meant me buying a whole nother set of numbered pills. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm going off tomorrow. I said, I'm going to be going back on my level. And he actually sent me a letter firing me as a patient. I'll never forget that. I got fired as a patient because I wouldn't listen to him. I was like, okay. But anyway, one of the unique problems with blood thinners is you can't take over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen or Advil or aspirin because they mess with how the drug works. And you don't need to make your blood thinner or do things that you shouldn't do by putting that in. So the drug that I got prescribed to me as my over-the-counter pain drug was Vicodin. So in 2001, I started my 20-some year prescriptions of Vicodin.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, it was a pain management tool for me. I never abused it. I was supposed to take 2 a day. Sometimes I would take 1. If I had a really bad day, I'd take 3. But it tricked me into believing I was having a normal life. Because that's how I dealt with my pain. And I also believed because of my accidents that all my pain was associated because of my screwed up nerves. My body would get weird signals. It's like one day my shoulder would hurt really bad for no reason. Next day it would be my knee.
Hmm.
Most of the time it was my back, but it was always something. And my neck was just brutal. Sleeping was the worst time of day for me because laying down just never agreed with my back and neck. I couldn't get comfortable. Hence, started my also 20 years on Ambien so I could sleep. And I took so many different drugs for my injury, whether it was muscle relaxer, Soma, Ambien. The latest was Mobic, and you name it, I took it over the years. And then, something really wild happened in 2017 or 18. I can't remember what year it was. We all became drug addicts.
Mm.
The opioid crisis pretty much mandated that doctors quit prescribing painkillers. And I think the FDA even come out and said they made a huge mistake because it wasn't the doctors that were causing the problems. It's fentanyl. It's not doctors prescribing pills. There might have been some bad actors, but all they did was put people that depended on pain medications in such a bad position. Because if you're really in pain, you're in pain. And I always said, I'm not addicted to the drugs. I'm addicted to not being in pain all the time. And people don't realize how oppressive that can be. And especially during that time frame, I started a business. It took off like a rocket. I got written up in Forbes multiple times.
Nice.
And I used to spend most of my day leaning against a wall, wondering how much longer I could walk. It was just brutal all the time. And that's even with my spinal fusion. It just kept getting worse. So after the pain pills went away, you had to get by. I tried everything, more physical therapy, more stretching, trying to exercise. The last thing I would ever thought of was, honestly, I always thought the whole diet thing was kind of, yeah, right. Sure, food will fix me. Sure. I never really heard that from anybody, firstly, but that's generally the attitude I hear from a lot of people.
Mm.
And so, I went through this whole time period where I really was struggling on how to deal with this. And finally, I decided, because I got to the point I couldn't even put my own socks on. I couldn't reach my foot. My leg hurt so bad when I tried to do it. And I would go back to the neurosurgeon or the orthopedic surgeon and say, why is this doing this? And they would always zero in on my back. And never once did they say, we need to look at your hip. So finally, it was suggested that maybe they should look at my hip, because me not being able to put my socks on was a pretty clear clue that I had a problem with my hip joint. And sure enough, when I saw the x-ray, I never forget walking in the office and they had the big thing up on the screen and it was like my x-rays of my hip. And I'm like, that is me. My left leg was like an inch shorter than my right leg. It was completely fused. And now I know I could never hit a golf ball. How can you turn on a golf ball if your leg's fused? But I accommodated so much my entire life. I actually tried to learn to walk without a limp, and then actually, I think it was in 2021, we went to a concert, my wife and I, in San Diego. And we had this little dinner thing before, and there was a doctor and his wife that were with us. And when we sat down to dinner, because we had walked, this was in San Francisco, and we walked up to Ghirardelli Square, up the hills, down the hills. And he looks at me at the table and goes, you walk like a man that's in a lot of pain. And I was thinking I was having a pretty good day. So that really, really made me start thinking about it. So, I decided after seeing my hip, it was time to do my hip replacement surgery. And honestly, that was probably the easiest thing I've ever experienced. I was in the hospital at 2 and back in my living room at 6:30 in the evening, and the hospital's 30 miles from my house. So you think about that. I mean, I had the total hip replacement, woke up, had to walk up steps, and I was back in my house. Next day, I was hurting, but I got my pain pills, had my surgery. Everything was great, but my mindset was, I can't take these. I'm going to take a half, and I'm like, and they called me up and said, well, how's it going? I said, well, this really kind of hurts more. They said, you taking your pain pills? I'm like, well, I know I can't get any more, so I'm going to stretch these out. She goes, no, 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 no. You need to stay ahead of the pain But and honestly, that was in May of 22. And in June of 22, I was getting to the point I was doing 10,000 steps a day. I did my physical therapy. I was just like on top of the world. I had a brand new posture. I wasn't all hunched over anymore because my leg was short and I was compensating. It was awesome. Still is awesome, actually. And, to me, that's what medicine is about. Fixing things like that nothing can fix because you damaged them, but I had other issues. My right knee really hurt badly, especially when I tried to snow ski. And, it was kind of funny. No matter how much I hurt, it was just one of my passions. I was just going to do it at least 2 or 3 times a year just so I could. And usually when you and I moved a bit, you start feeling better. And, I just love skiing, but I got to the point putting my boot on was almost impossible, let alone putting my socks on. And, so you go through these issues, and all of a sudden, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, and I think it was a confluence of events, but I also believe over the years, the pain pills were masking my real problem. My real problem was I was nothing but one big inflamed mess. Seriously, whether in, so, I went to my family doctor, told him, look, I feel much better now, but what happens when the pills run out? I'm kind of confident, but, and it was a very simple procedure because the hospital had a policy. I think it was either 8 or 10 weeks after surgery. That's it. There is no other option. You cannot. I could apply to the state for an exemption. Like, I can't live like this. This is nuts. And as I tried to move on from that, I got into July of 22 and August of 22. And I got to the point where if I tried to walk, all of a sudden I would get cold. Then my right side would get really hot. And if I didn't find a place to get on the floor in a fetal position, the pain was so overwhelming, it just made me throw up. I never experienced anything like that. And this is kind of like a funny story, but it is there used to be a singer from the 70s, Gordon Lightfoot. And he was touring in Peoria, Illinois. And this was in September of 22. And I wanted to see him because he was 84 years old and he actually died like a month or two later. So we went to the Civic Center in Peoria. There's a Marriott hotel attached to it. It's literally a couple, maybe 100-yard walk through an elevated tunnel to get to the theater. I threw up 3 times walking to the theater because it was so blinding. And I couldn't believe it. I'm standing there watching this 84-year-old guy play his guitar going, I can't even believe I can stand here. It was brutal. And I knew something had to change. It was just getting worse and worse. So finally, my doctor sends me to a rheumatologist. And the rheumatologist said I had really advanced rheumatoid arthritis. My hands were pretty contorted. And I'm 70. Back then I was 70 years old. And I was starting to have real problems with my legs and feet contorting, doing really strange things. I had very little control when I walked. I hardly had balance. And they just told me, you have really advanced rheumatoid arthritis. They put me on a drug called methotrexate, which is a chemo drug in light doses, and it suppresses your immune system so it doesn't attack your body. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a great thing to do right after COVID, suppress my immune system so I can catch anything. Yeah, it just didn't feel right to me. And I went back and they said it would take 16 weeks for that drug to be therapeutic. And when I took it for 3 weeks, and then the miracle happened. My daughter, who lives in California, called me up, and she's 47 now, and she's had issues with various things. She got Lyme's disease when she was younger, or she thought it was that. But bottom line is, she's been on a quest for many years to try to figure out how to manage her health with her diet. And every time we would see my daughter, she was either doing sweet potatoes or she was eating something wild. Mm-hmm. And she literally called me up and said, Dad, you need to quit eating inflammatory foods. And I'm like, what? Inflammatory foods. Okay, what is that? I had no idea. That's just not on my chart. And she actually sent me 3 YouTube videos. One of you, one of Dr. Berry, and one of Sally Norton to educate me on oxalates. And so I watched the videos, and she kept sending me stuff and encouraged me to look at the comments, because frankly, I hardly ever went to YouTube. If I did, it was very rare. And I just wouldn't go there to look for stuff like this. And the more I saw it, the more it made sense to me. And I should back up just for a second. And right before that phone call, and I forgot to say this, I was so bad. I was literally laying on my bedroom floor. And the reason I did this, and I really I'm amazed by it. When I came back from the rheumatologist and went to my family doctor, I was pretty upset. I was just like, so this is arthritis? All this pain is arthritis? What is arthritis? You right away you're starting to look it up, read about it, I try to understand it, and all the different types. And he just looked at me and goes, John, this is a progressive disease. It only gets worse. There is no correction for this. He said, if I were you, I would, most RAs don't make it past 75 years old. You're going to be 71 soon. I would go home and have a drink with my wife and enjoy your time. That just freaked me out.
Wow.
That just freaked me out. My type A person, that just freaked me out. So I went home that night, and I was actually laying in the bedroom floor, curled up in the fetal position in such pain. And the only thing I could get was, I'll give you Xanax for your anxiety. I'm like, I don't have anxiety. I am like immeasurably, I'm hurting. And I told my wife, I said, this is it. It's time for me to die. I can't live like this. If this is my life, I can't do this. How can I possibly function like this? It's one thing to walk around, but if you get so blinded with pain, you throw up, how can you function that way? And so then came the phone call. So it made my decisions, honestly, easy. Firstly, I didn't do this to lose weight. I think most of my adult life, I was overweight, in my opinion. I was never like what I would call obese, but I was 5'10" and 5'11" maybe. And I when I graduated from high school, I weighed 220 pounds because I played football, even with my leg. And, when I was a freshman in college, I used to run 6 miles a day.
Nice.
I went from 220 down to about 160, but again, you think about the abuse I was doing to my hip, my back, that I didn't even know was hurt as bad as it was. I just pushed through it all the time. So it was easy for me to let go of things because when you think you're dying, everything's different. Everything is different. It's much easier to go, I grew up Italian. I lived on pasta. I lived on spaghetti. I lived on red sauce. My mother's side of the family's from Italy. My dad's side of the family was from the Ukraine. And the foods that they have are it's mostly dough, potatoes. It's every kind of starch and carbohydrate that you can possibly think of packed into things. And then I really feel sad for my parents too, because, they were duped with the whole seed oil cholesterol scam that you so eloquently talked about that was not true. So basically, I just went cold turkey on this diet. My daughter warned me, you can't do this. You can't just do it. You'll start dumping oxalates. You have 70 years of poison in your body. Once your body does realize you're doing the right thing for it, it actually goes into high gear getting rid of stuff. So it was a pretty interesting first month. But the most amazing thing to me is literally 3 weeks after I started this diet, my hands straight.
Yeah, nice.
I didn't hurt anymore. I literally have no pain. I've had no pain since November of 22. November of 22 is November 1st of 22 is when I started this lifestyle. It's not a diet. It's a lifestyle. It's a life's choice. And the thing, honestly, in the beginning, I was doing it. It worked, but I had no idea why. All I knew is she said if I did this, it would help. And I'll be damned, it helped a lot. So this is where the education part comes in. I wanted to take the time to learn why. And the more you learn, to me, the more amazing it is. And it's like I enjoy the fact of how you tie this into history because it makes total sense. When nature created us or however we were created, I agree. My new goal is to live to be 120 now. I never thought I was going to make it to 72, let alone 120. But, if you think about it, when we were set up with all these parameters, the one crazy factor that was never taken into consideration with our design is us being this amazing apex predator that's the top of the food chain would do so many stupid things to hurt ourselves with our diet. We've strayed so far from eating what we were intended to eat. And it makes total sense to me. And those are things people just don't think about. And the other thing that really to me, it's what keeps me going. It keeps me going because it is so logical. Knowing, I've listened to Dr. Oveda. He says the same things you say. He talks about the medical literature in the 17 and 1800s. There's no mention of heart attacks.
Yep.
You said the first recorded one was in 1912. That's astounding to me. It's just crazy for people to look at that and go, this just never happened before.
Yeah.
And how did it happen at such an elevated level? And when you really start understanding the impact of sugar and high fructose corn syrup and all the carbs and what they do to our body and what diabetes does to our body, what glucose does to our body. It poisons everything. And my mother and dad both had cancer. My mother had ovarian cancer when she was 27 years old in 1963. She was given 48 hours to live after a pioneering surgeon went in and removed her whole reproductive system. And back then they did cobalt radiation and they literally fried her. She went through the change of life, everything. It was such a brutal time. She lived to be 77, by the way. But she had a tough life. And if I only want to go back and say, Mom, if you could have just laid off the spaghetti, if you could have just laid off the sugar, laid off the carbs, because I also believe, just like looking at this, it makes total sense to me also. Like, I spent most of my life believing, when's it going to happen? When's the cancer going to happen? It's an inherited thing, right? My parents had it. Yeah, other parents, people in my family had it. But it seems to me that everything I'm at least hearing, that's one of the hot new treatments for cancer now. Starve it by not putting any carbs or glucose in your system, because cancer cells love glucose. And it makes total sense to me that if I don't put any glucose in my body for the rest of my life, I'm limiting my chances of getting cancer. Mm-hmm. Will I? Nobody knows that for sure, but I'm liking my odds. And I like my odds because I am a living example of how amazing I feel. How, being on drugs like Ambien because you can't sleep, and now I sleep amazing. Being on drugs like this is one that I'm really excited about. And I've heard a few people talk about this, but I've been on Flomax probably since 2000. And I'm telling you, my prostate was to the point where, or my BPH or whatever you call it, was to the point, if I would go do something and I would forget travel and forget to take my Flomax or forget to take it with me, it would be desperation because it just didn't work. And honestly, I don't take Flomax anymore. I believe the prostate thing is inflammation too. It has to be, because mine just didn't magically go down. It just works now.
Also insulin. It's insulin. It's prostate very insulin sensitive. So insulin's an anabolic steroid, and it tells things to grow, and also tells your prostate to grow. And so when you get a lot of high insulin, you're eating a lot of sugar, you're raising your insulin, it tells your prostate to grow, and you can get big swollen prostates. You get rid of that, your insulin levels come down to normal, and those tissues that were hyperinflated due to those signals now go back down to normal. So yeah, that's a well-described phenomenon with prostate. So that's good. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
I'm so excited about it. It's just because I've always hated that drug. Mm-hmm. It has other side effects that aren't very nice if you like being a guy, I guess. And, and then other cool things that happened to me with my blood clot. I had some really, really ugly veins in my left leg because my left leg just got hammered between all the years of being dwarfed from all my injuries and then the blood clot in it. And my veins are actually starting to heal. It's kind of crazy. I never had veins in my arms like I have now. They're like supersized.
Hmm.
And I watched a YouTube video. I forget who it was. Somebody said something about when you get on this long enough, your circulatory system definitely regenerates itself. And because to me, that's what makes sense to, like I said earlier, when we were created, the one variable that nobody expected is that we were going to go out and develop such crazy foods to poison ourselves with.
Hmm.
And, to know that the oxalates and the poisons in vegetables are causing these crazy things to happen in your body. And then you throw in the carbs and the sugar. It's we there is it's just we weren't designed to handle that. It wasn't expected, and at least when you go back to a species specific diet, which makes total sense to me, that your body has a chance to heal itself because it isn't so busy trying to heal all the things that you're inflicting on it. I think Dr. Oveda said that in one of his videos about the circulatory system. It's like a big construction zone. And the more, and you have all these workers out there. And
Hmm.
I believe he said that, the cholesterol is actually like the agent that carries all the tools for the contractors. This bad stuff that we're supposed to keep down, it is what heals us.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's designed to rebuild your body till the day you die. And hopefully that day is 120 or older. But
Hmm.
if you overload your body with all these issues that causes your construction workers that are supposed to fix your body to have so much work, they can't keep up with anything. That's when you die. It's when you become miserable. And to me, it's so simple. This diet, this lifestyle is so simple. I love the fact I never get hungry. True.
Hmm.
I'm sure you don't either. You eat because it's a nutritional event. It's
Hmm.
not a social event.
Yeah.
I never get hungry. The whole philosophy of what did we do? We hunted for things, we caught them, we feasted, and we starved. And nature didn't set us up to starve and be crazy. Oh my God, if I don't catch another, he set us up not to be like that. So we don't panic. That's why fasting, when you do this diet, is so easy because you're not really fasting. You're just being natural. We were designed, I think, not to eat predominantly more than we were designed to eat. And then what do people do all the time? They snack constantly, constantly. We weren't supposed to do that. We never had those things.
Hmm.
Isn't it a shame we have the dock workers strike in the United States and there's going to be no bananas? What a sin.
Uh,
That's another thing that shocked me. Bananas have almost as much sugar in them as a can of Coke.
yeah.
I never knew that. So do
Yeah.
apples.
Yeah.
And then when you did, what is it? 10 takes 10 apples to make a cup of apple juice.
Yeah.
It's
It can
just,
take, it can
it's,
take a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think the favorite statistic I heard, and I am almost, my daughter kind of warned me about don't get so obsessive with this. It's like, I'm not obsessive. That's my passion. I like this. I like trying to help people. It's so obvious, especially when you know it works.
Hmm.
And it's just, I can't say enough about it. When I talk to people, especially when I try to explain to them the evils of corn oil, it's a seed. It has all the defense chemicals in it. I'm not even sure if corn was even an original plant or we invented it.
Yeah. We invented
But
it.
But the average American, I think, takes in 8 tablespoons of canola oil a day because it's so pervasive in everything in our society. And it takes 91 ears of corn to make 8 tablespoons of canola oil. That's just mind boggling. That we'll sit down and eat 91 ears of corn. Nobody can do that. Nobody would do that. It's just like you wouldn't sit down and eat 10 apples. Even here in, olive oil is a much better solution. Well, it takes 45 olives to make a tablespoon of olive oil. Would you sit down and eat 45 olives at a time? I find it easier just to eat meat. It's simple. It's simple. It's delicious. And you don't even have to think about how much you eat because, like you said, you eat until your body says, I'm happy. And you can tell by the taste. And actually, my son and I just split a 1,800-pound steer that's nicely marbled.
Nice.
And really looking forward to not having to go to the butcher all the time.
Yeah. So, John, first of all, thank you for that. That's an amazing story. All the things you've come through, and now at this point in your life, being so much healthier and so being pain free and being able to enjoy your life in a very different way. Obviously, that would have been amazing if you could get this even earlier, but I'm glad that you got it now. I'm glad your daughter was able to put you onto this. You said something quite striking, which was you were basically had given up. You were in so much pain that you didn't want to live anymore. You couldn't go through that anymore. And now that doesn't seem to be the case. So what exactly has changed now? What are you able to do now that you weren't able to before? And what's life like for John?
The thing that I find the most amazing is, I didn't ski in 22, obviously, or because I had my hip replaced, I had all my issues, my pain. And even though I was feeling amazingly better in December, I wasn't going to go skiing. It just wasn't in the cards. And so fast forward to this past winter, we went to my daughter and son-in-law who are avid snowboarders, and they like to go out west and they like to ski fast and long. And the old skier that I was, we would go out and ski for 2 minutes and stop, catch our breath, 2 minutes, And then honestly, for me, after skiing, it was brutal. I'd have to sit in the hot tub and just wonder how much I was going to be hurting the next day. So we went out, and it was like first time skiing, firstly on my hip. So I was a little pensive about that because it is a completely artificial hip with a collar on it because of my spinal fusion. And so first run, I was like, it was pretty good. I skied really well, and I really didn't have any issues. And I was just like, and I didn't even notice, but my right knee didn't grind, which was a big point. And then after that, it was like, okay, I'm going to keep up with you guys because I can ski pretty well. I've been skiing my whole life. And the thing, I was after about the four, and we literally did top to bottom at Park City, and there's some of those runs are miles long. Probably after the fifth or sixth run, we're sitting on the ski lift, and I looked at my son-in-law and said, this is really weird, but my legs aren't burning. I'm not tired at all. And when we were done, I never got sore. It was like I never did it.
Nice.
It's just like the ability to recover is so different. Even doing stupid things like yard work or trimming trees or trimming bushes, holding hedge climber, things that I used to just get brutally sore over. It's just like I don't do it. There's so many changes happening to me. One of my bigger issues too was when my spinal fusion in my neck, when I used to try to turn my neck like this, it would actually scare me because it would grind and crack and pop so much. I mean, literally, it would grind the whole area. You could hear it.
Mm.
My neck doesn't grind at all anymore, at all. You know, and I kind of believe that I may have been, I think oxalates crystallize in all your joints. And I don't know if I was so overloaded with oxalates that, you know, I still think occasionally my body still dumps oxalates because I'm like, you know, I'm 2 years into this now. And I don't know how long it takes to completely purge your body of those things. But all I know is it's just remarkably different for me. My attitude with work, you know, was I depressed before? You know, that's why this was never a weight issue to me because for the 3 months leading up to this, I was so damn depressed. I didn't eat. I just didn't eat. I had no reason to eat. Like I said, I was ready to check out. You know, when I did eat, if I tried to move, I threw up. It just wasn't a very nice situation for me.
Wow.
And so to get out of that, you know, but the amazing thing, the standard lines, you go to the doctor, you would think the doctor would go, wow. And it's like, you need to be checking that cholesterol, you know. It still worries about that cholesterol. I'm like, it's like I actually just had a colonoscopy then. You know, I guess it's the carnivore colonoscopy. And yeah, and actually, when I went in there, because this guy likes to talk, the doctor likes to talk. And I told him, I said, here's what I'm doing, man. It's changed my life. Told him all about it. And, you know, told him my opinion on fiber, which is your opinion on fiber. And, and, you know, and then after the colonoscopy is over, he comes into me and goes, well, you know, it's the same thing every time because I've had one since I've been 50. So this is I can't even remember how many times I've done that. And I don't know if I'm even going to do it anymore. So I think it might be a waste of time. But he goes, yeah, we removed a small polyp and you have a little bit of diverticulitis. So you need to keep eating that fiber. Like, okay, whatever. He said, I'm not eating fiber. You know, because my digestion is, you know, it's funny, you listen. I like to, you know, I like to spend when I do watch YouTube videos, I like to really watch sites a lot like Dave Mack's site where he just talks to people. You know, it's not always a medical lecture, it's just their experience. And I really believe people aren't going to just make it up. It's really happening out there. And so to me, it's a lot more entertaining and learning to watch that because after a while, I mean, it's reinforcement constantly, but in general, I just I can't say enough about how my life has changed because of this lifestyle. And I have to tell you a brief, funny story about the Rendezvous Beef Roundup, just to tell you how pervasive you know, I think I put a little thing in my notes about my belief in business. You know, if you're going to sell anything or market anything new, it has to be a cause. You better figure out what cause it is because it will not have a place. And then you have to be an evangelist. You got to go out and create disciples. Yeah, a good one here. I'm a great disciple for this. And, you know, so you walk. I lost my train of thought what I was going to say about that.
Was it the Rendezvous Beef City Roundup? There's something there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So on the way back, we're driving back, and I had actually rented a car that had automatic driving. And I was playing with it in the car also, and it was a rental car. So the acceleration of that thing was something. Bottom line, I got pulled over for like 90 in a 70.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I looked up and went, oh, I can't believe it. And so I pulled over the exit, and the state policeman comes up, and this is in Nebraska. And he goes, you in a hurry? I was like, what can I say? I told him, I said, it's a rental car. And he goes, so where are you coming from? And I told him, I said, well, we were just out in Wyoming I said, I went out there to learn a little more about grass raised, grass finished beef. And I said, but we really went out there because it's kind of becoming a kind of like a new convention meeting thing for a lifestyle I kind of lead called carnivore. And the state cop looks at me and goes, I'm 6 months in.
Nice.
I got a warning. We talked for at
Yeah.
least a half hour about the diet. That's all we did was we talked about it. Was like 100 degrees outside, and he was just sweating up a storm, talking to me about how much better he feels, and
Hmm.
getting my advice. And I was like, I know I'm not going to get a ticket now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was pretty
Yeah.
amazing. But what are the odds of that?
Yeah.
It's just, I really believe there is. How long can people hide from this?
Hmm.
You know, I've been noticing on X that somebody keeps publishing a study that was done at Harvard in 2019 with 2,069 diabetics that did carnivore for 6 straight months. 100% of them went into remission. 100%. And there's all the other little statistics they did. And I don't know why that isn't like front page news and everywhere, because
Yeah.
it's gonna.
Well, it's funny that so that Harvard study has had like 2,000 or so patients. Not all of them were diabetic, but there were a lot of diabetics in there. And you're right, 100% of them came off 100% of their injectable medications and put their diabetes into remission, autoimmune issues, and all these other things massively improved. And everyone said that they improved and got better. And they had to be carnivore for at least 6 months, and that was sort of the criteria. And the immediate sort of detractions from people who hype up the nurses study and things like that are just a survey. They say, hey, what'd you eat last year or the last 2 years or something like that, which are extremely inaccurate, but they all be all of that this oh I'm sorry, I think this is messed up my there we go. I think my microphone changed for a second. But this is the nurses studying those survey studies are the end all be all. And they push that for saying, "Ooh, meat's bad," all that sort of stuff. And then you get this, which is exactly as rel as high as good as the nurses study, if not more. They say, oh, it's not a good study. There's all these flaws. It's just you're just asking them, what they. It's like, so is a nurses study. So are all these nutritional survey studies. It's a nutritional survey study. So as
Mm.
flawed or powerful as it is, as they all are, it's exactly that. And so, you can't just go and say, well, all these nutritional survey studies are just the bee's knees, and then until you get one that you don't want, until you get one that has different
Right.
results that you don't want, and then you start talking about all the flaws. You can't do that. But yeah, so but there's a lot of powers that be that make tens of trillions of dollars feeding us garbage and then treating the disorders that we get from eating that garbage worldwide. And so,
I think personally what's even more amazing is the federal government in the United States, and I don't know what they do in Australia, but we
mhm,
subsidize farming to make
yeah,
it the grains even cheaper
yeah,
for the companies that are making the poison. And now
yeah,
the government's going to have this massive,
mhm,
they think the health situation is bad now. My wife and I go to a lot of concerts. And I think the published obesity rate in the United States right now is what, either 40 or 70%. I don't know what
40,
it is. But
42% obesity and 70% overweight and obese.
yeah, I tell you what, you go to the concerts and just sit back and watch the people. I think it's higher than that.
Mm,
It's almost scary. And you almost want to go up and slap people and say, what are
mm,
you doing to yourself?
mm.
How can you not look in the mirror and go, this is not normal? But it's
Mhm.
become the new normal.
To be
And I don't
fair,
understand.
oh, sorry. To be fair about the the obesity rate, it can be a bit skewed because it goes by BMI, and
Right,
so me at my height and weight, I'm BMI 29.5 to 30. 30 is the cutoff for obesity. And
right,
so, depending on if I go to the gym more, I'll become obese, right? I'll put on more
right,
muscle and then all of a sudden I'm obese. And so that does come into play. For instance, the Pacific Islands like, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, those sorts of places. They have some of the highest obesity rates in the world. They've got like it's like 70% obesity rates and then, overweight. But you go there and they certainly do have some people that are extremely obese as far as body fat percentage. And then other ones, they just look like they're walking around. They just got done at the Arnold, I mean, they just look like they're just statues.
right.
Pacific Islanders have a much higher prevalence of something called the Burley gene, which is very aptly named because it just makes you buff and burly, and they just get just absolutely stacked with muscle and they just look like they're on steroids and they've never been in the gym in their life. And you turn on the Burley gene in animals and they just look absolutely jacked up. But they have a higher
Right.
prevalence of that. And so you get these very big, and also their bones, they have higher bone density as well than other populations. And they're just built different. And so that can skew that as well. But you're right. There are the majority of people are definitely have a lot of excess fat and weight and are unhealthy, certainly.
And everything I know, that excess weight is trying to tell you that that glucose has no place to go.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just building up. Your body's crying out and saying, I need help. And yet you'll talk to, oh, I'm not diabetic. I'm not diabetic. One of the things I was never, my entire life, blood work was never a big deal.
Hmm.
It's just not something, even when I would get my annual blood work done, it's like I never even reviewed it. It was always okay. And, but one of the things that was, I strikingly remember is when I was having my physical therapy for my hip replacement, one of the exercises I had to do was they put these like rubber, they're almost like cloths that are rubber that
Hmm.
you can fold up and tie, and then you put them between your legs. And I was doing side steps. Like I said, I was like a machine during physical therapy. I was all into it. And I'll never forget when I was done with that exercise, the physical therapist standing back, just looking at me, going, oh my. I'm like, what are you looking? Where I had those things in my leg, it was like a welt that was like a half
Hmm.
inch deep. I had pitting edema so bad. I
Wow.
mean, I would touch my leg with my finger, the hole would stay there for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
So, which told me I probably was either pre diabetic or diabetic.
Mm.
I'm not sure because I've never been tested. And I know the one blood work I had done here, it's probably a year ago. I think I came back at like 5.4, 5.6, the A1C thing. And then the last one I had done, it came back at 5.7. And
Mm.
it was highlighted that I was pre-diabetic. And I think I saw an article saying, no, 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 no. That test can be skewed because I don't know what molecule it is in your body, but something gets bigger and lasts longer
Mhm.
when you're on this diet. So it can skew that number when you're fasting. Because when you're fasting, you don't get rid of I don't know, the red blood cells or something as quickly. And so once I read that, I was like, I'm not worried about that
Mhm.
because I am definitely not that. I can't be. I
Yeah.
mean, unless I'm like some kind of freak that gets diabetes without any carbs and sugar. I just like to me, it's all poison.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah,
John,
and like I
oh,
said, when
sorry.
you're in my position, everything became poison to me.
Yeah.
It was easy. Things that I loved just became poison. And people need to understand that. And that's why, when I have a dear friend, his wife has rheumatoid arthritis so bad. Her hands are like so bad.
Mm.
And I was just like, I said, "Oh, you got to do this." I said, "What do you have to lose? Nobody ever died from eating meat." I
Mhm.
said, "Just do it for 4 weeks." And she goes, "Oh my God, but I love my legumes. I could never eat without my." I'm like, you're more worried about beans and the fact that you can't hold anything in your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you love your beans more than you love your hands? Like
Yeah,
being pain
it
free?
just blows my mind. But
Yeah.
again, it gets back to that Jeremiah, diet. Yeah, the
Mhm.
diet. This.
I think they just can't, it's just too good to be true. It's just can't, oh no, I couldn't do it because they don't understand like how big of a difference it's going to make in their life. Whereas if they did that and they could move their hands and they were pain free, I doubt very much that much of any of them would ever go back at the end of the month and go, screw, it's not worth it. Pinto beans is better than this. It's like, no, it's not. No one's going to say that, so it's just, I think they just don't believe it. I think they think it's too good to be true. They've been told their entire life by their doctors and everyone else that it's never going to be cured. It's never going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And they believe it, and they believe it deep down. And even though they saw that you did it, it's a fluke. And even though that
Yeah,
other people have done it, that's a fluke too. And even though tens of thousands of people have done it already, that's still a fluke. And even though that was the treatment for rheumatoid arthritis specifically since the 1800s, and that's in the medical literature, it's still a fluke. I mean, it's they have to sort of see the preponderance of evidence before they just go, okay, that makes sense to me. Or just get to a screw it moment. I've got nothing to lose. Like you were just like, well, what the hell do I have to lose? I'm already checked out anyway. What's eating
yeah.
meat for a
And
couple of weeks?
it makes it easier, and that's where the challenge is for somebody that isn't in that position.
Yeah.
But my attitude about that is, but why wait? Why wait till you're in that position? Because then it's a whole different story. I wish I would have done this when I was 20.
Yeah.
I like to me, the changes, like I'm watching my visceral fat just disappear.
Hmm.
Slow. It's not 100% yet, but I'm starting to have the beginnings of my six pack, and I do
Hmm.
not do sit ups. Just don't do sit ups. I'm just beginning to exercise a little bit. I'm trying, but I'm trying to do it more along the lines of just like running hard
Yeah.
and not waste my time doing rep after rep, but just, I don't know, getting back to the natural thing, just like the animals. They go out and sprint, nature beefs them up. Same thing should happen to us.
Hmm.
If you go out and work really hard, it's going to trigger things in your body to make it grow and be strong. And it just makes total sense to me. To understand and believe the history of this is so important. And then the other side of it, which really kind of hit me in the face too, because I never really understood this. I eat a lot of eggs,
Hmm.
not as much as I did in the beginning, but I eat a lot of eggs. But and again, I don't know this for fact, but it's my understanding that the makeup of an egg and the makeup of a mother's breast milk are very similar. Very, very similar as far as nutrients, cholesterol, saturated fat content, all the little things that are necessary to nurture a new life into this world, and it amazes me that eggs became bad for us for a
Hmm.
while, several years ago, and how that ever came about. But what really opened my eyes to this whole thing is the fact that your brain and your heart prefer to be nourished with, was it an amino acid called a ketone?
Hmm.
It's the primary food source for your brain and your heart. And when you are insulin resistant and you're loaded with glucose, your liver quits making that. And so your brain and your heart are living off of glucose and starving to death. So you go back to, well, geez, then look at a little kid developing. And I think you did an amazing job talking about. I actually sent you a couple videos on your Gmail of my granddaughter eating her
Right.
eating
Yeah.
her first ribeye bone
Yeah.
and
Nice.
gnawing on her ribeye,
Hmm.
and she loves it, and that they're taking it seriously because, the average person doesn't realize that a baby's in perfect ketosis. Its brain and its heart are developing at the maximum that it can. And then what do we do after 6 months? We put them on baby formula invented by Dr. Nestle.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy,
Yeah.
and that's why the switch, because we didn't do that thousands of years ago to immediately poison our kids,
Yeah.
to stunt their development, and both of we had two new grandkids come in here just in the last 6 months, 8 months, and they're all into the carnivore diet now.
Yeah. Good.
Some of them not completely, but they're really paying attention to what they're giving the kids to. The sugar is like getting taken away. I don't even know if my one granddaughter will ever see sugar. I hope not.
Yeah. So, John, unfortunately, I have to run to another meeting here in a second, but I did want to ask you just quickly. Your doctor that you've worked with for years that has seen you in such pain. You've got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and all these other multiple reasons for having this serious systemic pain. What does your long-term doctor think of your recovery?
He really just doesn't have an opinion. It's
Mhm.
more like kind of whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I said,
Okay.
I'm telling you what I'm doing. I even like go in there and say, how many MS patients you have?
Hmm.
And he says, oh, I have quite a few of them. I said, are you telling them the diet will possibly reverse MS?
Hmm.
Then I tell them the story. What's her Terry Walls? She's a PhD in medical research at the University of Iowa.
Hmm.
Was in a wheelchair with a joystick, and now she rides her bicycle to work.
Hmm.
How can doctors not tell people this?
Yeah.
How can they keep telling them to do insulin when they could tell them to just quit eating garbage?
Yeah.
Amazes me. And if
Yeah.
I could ask one other real quick question, is
Sure.
apaxia an
What's
autoimmune disease? Apaxia?
apaxia?
Yeah. It's
Not sure what
genetic
that is.
apaxia. It affects your spine stem and you lose your ability to walk and function.
Apaxia? How do you
Yeah, I'm
spell
pretty
it?
sure that's what it's called.
There's
Ataxia,
apraxia.
maybe?
Well, there's ataxia, that'd be difficult gait, and there's apraxia, which is another thing entirely, and that's a sort of a motor issue. You can't really control your movements. But I mean, there can be different causes of that, of both. Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code CHAFEE today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I just have a friend and it's genetic,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't seen him in years, and he's in a wheelchair.
Mm.
And what I was able to read online about it, it's an autoimmune issue.
Well,
And
there.
it's a genetic, and it can be genetic, it can be caused by strokes, it can
Mhm.
be caused by a lot of things.
Hmm.
And
You're probably talking about
no,
apraxia
that's
then. Yeah. Apraxia is
yeah,
sort of a general term for sort of different, these movement disorders where you really can't control your movement, but they can be from different reasons for that.
right,
The thing with genetic or anything else, there's typically a large environmental component. So, we have these different twin studies and we look at different genetic issues where you have, both twins are identical twins and they both have this genetic issue. But if one person has the disease, like 60% of the time, the other twin will have the disease. So they have, it's called penetrance, right? So if they've studied that in twin studies, they might be able to say that this disease has a 60% penetrance. And so, if you have this gene 60% of the time, you'll get the disease basically.
right,
So, it's so what does that mean? That means you have to have a genetic predisposition and an environmental trigger. So most diseases on Earth are going to be that. You have a genetic predisposition and environmental trigger. Even these chronic diseases that are essentially entirely environmental. You have some people that are more or less predisposed to getting them. You have different people that have had exposure to agriculture for 8 to 10,000 years. We eat this garbage. We still get diabetes. We still get heart disease. We still get autoimmunity. We still get arthritis and osteoporosis and cancer and all these other sorts of things. But Native Americans, Native Australians, the Maasai, these people that have only been very recently introduced to agricultural foods and a post-agricultural society, they have far higher rates. It's far easier for them to get it because they're more genetically predisposed because they haven't built up 10,000 years of defenses against these sorts of things.
right,
So yeah, so you can certainly have a genetic cause for these sorts of things, but they will almost always have environmental triggers. And so, changing diet and lifestyle and trying to improve it maximally in all these different sorts of ways, getting rid of all the different exposures of weird chemicals. And we've invented and patented over 1 million novel chemicals since the 1970s that have never existed in nature. And so, what the hell are these things doing? But they all we have these things in agricultural industries, but also in food products, beauty industry, and cleaning products. So we're getting constantly exposed to these chemicals that have never existed in nature, and we have no idea what they do long term. And of course they're going to do something. It doesn't matter about calories. Calories don't mean anything in this context where
right.
we have chemical interactions and they're disrupting our normal physiology and homeostasis. And so, we're just sort of learning more and more about these things. But you've invented all these chemicals, a million of them, more, and they've never existed in nature. So we've never been able to see what they can do to us, and they're definitely going to have an effect one way or the other. So getting rid of all those things and trying to be outside, the average person now, average child especially in America, spends less time outdoors than a prisoner in a supermax prison, which is sort of crazy to think about, because they're locked
Right.
up, but they get 1 hour of yard time every day. And we think, well, we could go outside anytime, we're not prisoners, but we don't. We act like it. So we're in a box at home, we go in a box in our car, drive to our box at work or school, and we come back and sit in a box all day. We don't go outside, So people,
Right.
I mean, I looked at my own life, I'm not including driving time. I was spending less than an hour outside because I was just working all day and I'm working inside. So it's just like, okay, well, maybe I should get an outdoor workspace. But I mean, I can't really see patients like that unless I go back to the old Hippocrates method where I sit under a tree and teach students and see patients. But that's not always possible. But doing all those things and just addressing this with diet and lifestyle, doing all the same things that other people are doing and massively improving their health. We have no idea the extent of benefit that we can get and which issues and illnesses that we can help as a result of it. So, like you said, it's not going to hurt. So, might as well just try and see what happens.
Well, there's two. Like, firstly, that particular family, the way it was described to me with that apraxia thing
Hmm.
was it's a gene they got from their grandmother and their great grandmother, and they're all cursed. They
Hmm.
all have it. They're all going to get it. They live in fear of it,
Mm.
and it's just like, to me, and I read it, it's definitely an autoimmune thing. However, I don't know enough about it. There's only a couple YouTube videos about it. And the one guy is definitely a carnivore guy
Mhm.
talking to a group of apaxia patients. Most of them can't hardly even talk.
Mm.
And, but there was really not a lot of content about that or anything, but
Mm.
to me, it gets back to the same thing. The gun that's loaded and we have the trigger.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
I understand how not to pull the trigger now. And that's to
Mhm.
me, that's the importance of what you've educated me and
Good.
what Dr. Berry and the amazing work that you guys are doing. I mean, I know you see 10 or 20 patients a day, but you're actually seeing thousands, if not
Mhm.
millions of patients a day.
Mhm.
You're affecting so many lives. You got to be just blown away by what you discovered here.
Yeah.
And I know you didn't like invent this. You
Mhm.
tripped over it kind of like I did. You tripped over it a long time ago, but never even realized what you were doing,
Mm.
other than you knew plants were bad.
Yeah.
Now you know, and you
Mhm.
shared it. I think it's awesome. And
Well,
I
thank
just
you.
want to thank you for it.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, well, thank you. And you're very welcome. I'm really truly glad that this has helped you in the ways that it has. I get, every now and then you'll get, somebody saying some horrible things and saying that I'm hurting people and killing people and all this sort of stuff. And but for every one of those people, I get 1,000 people like yourself that come forward and saying this has completely revolutionized their life and given them their life back. And so, obviously, I know that well, I know in principle that this works because that's what the evidence shows. I know in my own experience, I know in my experience as a clinician, I see this working every day, and then seeing the thousands of people, hundreds of thousands now that have been reaching out and talking about their recoveries. I know that this is the right track. I'm always worried about it because like I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to lead people down the wrong path, especially when people are in such dire straits as you were. And so I constantly think about that. And when someone comes up and say, "Ooh, here's a problem, here's a flaw," I'm like, okay, let's check it out. Let's see what's going on. Do I need to adjust this? And, you know, quite often it's just, the same sort of tired arguments, just sort of wrapped up in a different package. There's just sort of, we shut them down on all their different fronts. And then they don't admit defeat and admit like, oh gosh, okay, yeah, it looks like we were wrong. Some people do, but the ideologues and the people profiting off of this is vilifying meat, uh, don't and almost never will, and they'll just jump to a different things like, okay, well, this got shut down, that got shut down, that got shut down. Well, what about this, and what about hormesis, and what about, it's just like, it's just, they're just sort of desperately trying to stay in the argument when they have no leg to stand on. So it's, and then they just always go back to cholesterol. That's sort of the same
And that,
tired argument. But it's, I
and
haven't
that's
seen
been so
anybody give a
badly, that's
proper
been so
argument against it.
seriously debunked. I don't
Oh my
understand
gosh, yes.
how doctors can even still talk about
Well,
it.
they
They
haven't looked
just
into
don't.
it. But like the the people that are in this space and that are arguing against meat, they have no excuse, because they're saying that they've looked into this and yes, it's really the case. No, you clearly haven't then, and if you have, then you're making excuses as to what you found. I mean, there's no experimental data anywhere on earth that has ever existed ever, that we know of, that has ever shown a cause and effect relationship between um, meat, red meat, saturated fat, animal fat, or cholesterol of any form, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, SDLDL cholesterol, or any other particulate, ApoB, LP little a, anything, any cholesterol, anything, have never shown a cause and effect relationship ever. And there are plenty of studies that show an inverse correlation or lack of correlation whatsoever. And there are at least 5 large randomized controlled trials with thousands of patients that have shown either absolutely no benefit by lowering cholesterol, or in 2 of the larger, better designed studies, that actually killed people, that more people were dying of heart attacks and strokes. by replacing saturated fat with polyunsaturated vegetable oils and lowering LDL cholesterol. And the excuse there is that, well, all that shows is that linoleic acid isn't good for you. It's like, guess what's in plant oils, buddy? Like, guess what's in the fats that you're telling people to
Yeah.
replace animal fat with? And no, that doesn't just show that, because they weren't just giving them straight linoleic acid. They were giving them seed oils. They were giving them margarine. Um, and they were dying, and they buried those things. So, it's they just make excuses no matter how much evidence, no matter there's preponderance of evidence, they just keep making excuses. And at that point, they're just so ideologically caught up in what they're doing. They're either blind to the truth, or they're just lying on purpose to push an agenda that they're likely being paid for. And either way, it's not really becoming of them as
Right.
people in general, and certainly not physicians, because there are physicians pushing this. And but the day-to-day doctors, this is just what we're being spoon-fed in medical school, is what we're being spoon-fed in residency, and you're so laser focused on passing your exams, and so you're just studying whatever the hell they teach you, and that is gospel. And then you pass your tests, and then you get into residency, and you just hyper focused on passing your residency and passing your boards, and you're like, oh, thank God, you can breathe again. And then you get into your practice, and now you've just been so trained to be so pigeonholed in your thinking that you don't even look outside the box, because
Right.
your whole universe is the box. And there are people that do get that new information comes up, and you have to stay current. But if they're not being exposed to that either, because it's just you don't get this sort of information in the big in certain conferences, like the diabetes conferences, and cardiac conferences, things like that, because the main sponsors are the food and drug companies, and they don't allow speakers like this to come in and shake things up often. And a lot of journals are being railroaded by the food and drug companies, and the Monsantos and Bayers of the world, that are their main financial supporters, to not publish things that go against their products. And that's something that a professor from MIT, Stephanie, can't remember her name, but she she said that, oh, actually, I have it here, Stephanie Seneff, Seneff. She's an older woman and a professor at MIT, and you should be able to publish anything from a professor at
Right.
MIT. And not like in the humanities, but like in the hard sciences. And um and so she's saying that she can't get her work published because she's doing a lot of research on glyphosate and showing how toxic and harmful it is. And the big companies that this would hurt are shutting it down and putting pressure on the journals to not publish her work and not publish other people's work, and to retract and pull out papers that they don't like. And so that's something that she's dealing with now, and that's going to be all over any publication. So the peer-reviewed system is already a bit bankrupt, because you're asking people to basically, you're never going to progress anything, because the peer reviewers are going to be like, no, that doesn't meet with the consensus. We're not going to let that in, unless they have an open mind and go, okay, that's interesting. That's a new way of looking at things. But a lot of people will say, no, that's not what the consensus says. We're not going to let this in. But even worse than that, these journals are now being told what to publish and who to publish, and you have all these studies that are mostly pushing a product, and they are flawed or intentionally misleading, because they make retrospective endpoints. They'll run a study out, like Monsanto did a study on rats where they exposed them to glyphosate, and they said, look, this is healthy, this is fine. We had these rats and they didn't get any problems. Well, the thing is, they only ran the experiment for 3 months, because after that they started getting a lot of illnesses and sicknesses. And so someone else
Right.
tried to reproduce that study, which is the only way that you can tell if something's valid, if an independent lab follows what you did and reproduces the
Right.
results. And so this was not reproducible. They had well, insofar as when they redid the study and actually let it go longer into the natural course of these rats' life, they had huge issues. They had, kidney failure and tumors and all sorts of horrible medical issues. And so, Monsanto would have retroactively put in these endpoints. They ran this experiment out, saw all these problems happening, and then went back to a point that they weren't having problems and published that. It's in a post hoc fashion, and so it's extremely dishonest, and it is very common. It's very prevalent. And then they're the major funders of these journals and the media companies and the news sources and the news outlets. So if anything comes out in the news about, against them, like they're less likely to come out in those news platforms that they sponsor. And then they push them to say, hey, you need to go and defend us and say that this is all garbage as well. So that happens too. So we're in a very, very, very scary time where our sources of information are extremely corrupt, and the truth is not allowed to get out, unfortunately, because it costs people money.
Seems to be the new mode of life in 2024, doesn't
I
it?
know it's
On
bad.
every front. It really is. It's really kind of sad.
Yeah.
Just like the Terry Walsh, the PhD at University of Iowa that reversed her MS, that was in the wheelchair. She one of the things I read about her that was pretty stunning is she was blown away by what happened to her, just like
Mm.
me.
Yeah.
And she she really wanted to start because she's a PhD. She does medical research. That's what she does.
Hmm.
And she could not get any funding from the NIH because they said
Yeah.
nobody would ever do that.
Hmm.
The reason is nobody would ever do that. So she's doing her research with private funding because she can't get any from the government but it's probably more pressures
Hmm.
from what you're describing than
Yeah.
that. But it's
Unfortunately.
just like old people. And I try to tell people, especially when I run into somebody and they want to talk about it. I finally got to the point, if you want to talk about it, I'll be glad to talk to you. But I don't like browbeat people because you can tell right away when people are turning it off. And,
Yeah.
but, you try to tell them it doesn't matter how old you are. You will be amazed how different you will feel
Yeah.
if you put the proper food in your body.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Hopefully, what's his name? Kerry Mann. Hopefully, his
mhm.
documentary, Healing
Mhm.
Humanity, will get it out a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I seem to be seeing, it's hard to tell on social media because they gauge so much of what you look at.
Mhm.
So that's all you get to see. They put in their models, and so you kind of get it. But I'm seeing more and more about carnivore in the news. I thought Dr. Lufkin's news was huge,
Mhm.
but it didn't get the attention it should have.
Mhm. Well, I think we just keep pushing, and and
Yeah.
having and getting more stories like yours out there is really the way that happens. Is getting people saying, okay, I'm in that situation, maybe it can work for me, and giving it a try. So, to that end, thank you very much for that, John. I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you taking the
Oh, yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um,
My advice to you as a
yeah.
doctor and a surgeon, if I were, and this is what I told the surgeon that did my hip. I said,
Mhm.
if I were you, I would put people on an all meat diet at
Mhm.
least 4 weeks before the surgery so they
Mhm.
heal faster.
Oh, they
They'll
do.
recover
Yeah.
quicker
Yeah.
because the recovery part of this is the amazing thing to me. The
Mhm.
energy I have, because I spent I used to tell my wife all the time, I can't believe I'm so tired all the time.
Mm.
Like hardly put my foot in front of the other. Part of it was a draining of the pain, but a lot of it was what was going on in my body because of what I was putting into it. It's just,
Yeah.
like I said, I think if you keep it simple, this is so easy. It's
Yeah.
so easy to eat. It's, I'll never change. I don't see a point of change.
Yeah, me too.
I love it.
Oh, great. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure
Well, thank you.
and not a problem. And I look forward to seeing you again at some more conferences in the US.
Yep. I plan on going to a few of them. I'm going to try to get a little more active in this arena, I
Yeah.
think it can only help. I feel like putting up a sign that says, I can help you get rid of your diabetes.
Mhm. Yeah.
No, but I'm not a doctor, so
Yeah.
but I don't know if you get in trouble for coaching people on how they eat or not. But it's
Hey,
just it's self
you're allowed to give your opinion. You just can't give medical advice unless you're licensed to in that area.
right, exactly.
But yeah,
And I got enough on my plate. I don't need to do that. So
yeah, you're
well,
great.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, John. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that and can relate. And if you know anybody that could be benefited by seeing this, please do send this on to them and share it on social media. Hit the like and subscribe if you're not, and leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you're suffering with something like this and have recovered as well, please do leave a comment letting people know, because that's a huge benefit to other people reading those comments and encouraging them to try it themselves. So you could help a lot of people by doing that. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.